I thought my place in the family business was untouchable. Turns out I was just keeping the seat warm for someone else. The leather chair in my father's office creaked as I shifted uncomfortably. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, New York glittered. A skyline I'd helped build, deal by deal, client by client. My fingers traced the edge of the Rivers and Company annual report on the table, the one showing a 217% revenue increase under my leadership. 10 years. That's how long I'd given to this company. 10 years of 80-hour weeks, of missed birthdays and canceled vacations. I'd taken a small, struggling family real estate firm and turned it into a $150 million enterprise. And now? Vanessa, my father began, adjusting his cufflinks, the ones I'd bought him last Christmas. Justin's graduating from Harvard next month. We've decided he'll be taking over as CEO. The air left my lungs. My mother, ever the diplomat, reached across the mahogany table to pat my hand. You'll stay on as COO, darling. You're so wonderful with operations. I stared at their faces, my father's carefully neutral expression, my mother's tight smile. This wasn't a discussion. This was a corporate coup. Then Justin leaned back in his chair, the sunlight catching his stupidly perfect jawline. Come on, Vanessa, he drawled. You know men are just better at big-picture leadership. All those late nights you spent micromanaging? Not necessary when you've got natural instincts. My coffee cup cracked in my hand. Dark liquid spilled across the financial reports like blood. I should have walked out then. Should have thrown my keycard on the table and let the glass doors hit me on the way out. But I stayed frozen in that chair, watching my parents exchange glances that said, "See? Emotional. This is why." The transition will begin immediately. My father continued, as if discussing a minor staffing change. Justin will shadow you this month. We've arranged for shadow me? My voice came out dangerously calm. You mean the man who couldn't be bothered to intern with us during college wants to shadow the person who built our entire commercial division? Justin smirked. Built? Please. You just got lucky with that Blackstone deal. That Blackstone deal. The one I'd worked 14 months to secure. The one where I'd flown to Chicago 3 times in February, once during a blizzard, to personally reassure their board. The deal that now accounted for 38% of our annual revenue. My mother cleared her throat. Vanessa, be reasonable. Justin has fresh ideas from Harvard. And let's be honest, clients prefer dealing with men in leadership roles. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. I realized with sudden clarity. They'd been planning this for years. I went back that night. Told myself I'd forgotten my laptop. Maybe part of me knew I'd find them there. My parents and Justin, celebrating over a bottle of 2005 Chateau Margaux in my father's private study. I heard them before I saw them. Already have interest from Titan Properties, my father was saying. Once Justin's settled as CEO, we sell. He gets 40%, we keep 50%. And Vanessa, well, she'll have her salary. Glass clinked. She'll throw a fit, Justin laughed. She'll get over it, my father replied. Or she can leave. The non-compete she signed last year bars her from working in real estate for 3 years if she quits. I stepped on something, looked down. There it was. Justin's Business Leader of the Year statuette, gleaming on the floor where he'd clearly dropped it earlier. The same award they'd given him last December for exceptional leadership potential. A prize he'd won by showing up to 2 charity galas and getting photographed with the mayor. I picked it up. Heavy. Solid bronze. Vanessa? My mother's voice behind me. I turned and let it slip. The statuette hit the marble with a glorious crash, the golden figure snapping clean off its base. Oh my God, I gasped, stepping back dramatically. The cat must have knocked it over. Justin's mouth fell open. We don't have a terrible accident, I murmured, grinding the statue's head under my Louboutin as I walked out. 3 a.m., my penthouse. I stood on the balcony, Manhattan's lights blurring through unshed tears. All those years of loyalty. All those sacrifices. For what? To be the placeholder daughter? The reliable workhorse they'd saddle with responsibility but never reward? My phone buzzed. A text from Mark, our former general counsel. Heard about the restructuring. You okay? I scrolled further down. A news alert. Titan Properties expands acquisition strategy. So that was their endgame. Sell to our biggest competitor, make Justin rich, and leave me with nothing but a non-compete clause to choke on. The wine glass in my hand trembled. Then I hurled it off the balcony, watching it shatter against the pavement 40 stories below. Fine. If they wanted war, they'd get one. And this time, I wouldn't play by their rules. If they think I'll walk away quietly, they've never seen a cornered animal fight back. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., but I'd been awake for hours. My penthouse smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, the remnants of my all-night planning session. I dressed in the dark, black Prada suit, hair pulled tight enough to hurt, war paint. The security guard at Rivers & Company barely glanced up when I swiped in at 5:17 a.m. Early start, Ms. Rivers? Just catching up. I lied, my smile sharp enough to draw blood. My office, no, Justin's future office, still smelled of the lemon polish the cleaners used. I'd chosen that scent specifically. Now it made me nauseous. The computer booted up slowly, as if resisting me. I navigated to the master client list, fingers flying across the keyboard. The printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out page after page of confidential contacts. 317 names, the architects of our empire. Then the screen flashed red. Password expired. Please contact your system administrator. I tried every variation I'd ever used. Birthdays, anniversaries, even Justin's stupid Yale graduation date. Nothing. Need help? Justin lounged in the doorway, holding 2 Starbucks cups like some kind of peace offering. His tie was already loosened at this ungodly hour. The carefully cultivated, hard-working air aesthetic. Changed all the passwords last night, he said, handing me a venti dark roast. Corporate security upgrade. Dad's orders. I took a sip. Bitter, like everything about this moment. Mark Rosen met me at a diner under the Brooklyn Bridge, the kind of place where the coffee could strip paint and the vinyl booths squeaked with every movement. He looked exhausted, his usually impeccable suit wrinkled. They've been planning this for months, he said, sketching a corporate structure on a napkin with a shaking hand. Rivers Legacy Holdings, LLC. All major assets transferred last quarter. Justin's the sole managing member. I traced the ink bleeding into cheap paper. My equity? Gone. Mark's finger tapped against a coffee stain. Page 47, Section B of your employment contract. Automatic forfeiture upon substantial role modification. The pancakes on my plate congealed into a sticky mess. Then Mark leaned in, his voice dropping. But here's something interesting. Remember how Blackstone almost backed out of the Miami deal last year? I stiffened. That deal had nearly given me an ulcer. Justin falsified occupancy reports. Ed Colson only signed because of an ironclad NDA. Mark's smile was razor thin. If that ever got out, my apartment looked like the aftermath of a cybercrime spree. 3 laptops hummed on my dining table, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans. I'd spent hours combing through backup drives, cloud storage, even old USB sticks. The Blackstone folder was gone. Not just deleted, scrubbed clean from every system. Then my phone buzzed. Ethan, 12:47 a.m. Looking for something? Miss me yet? My stomach twisted. Ethan Carter, my ex who'd accidentally forwarded my emails to competitors during our messy breakup. Now apparently Justin's new IT director. I pulled up his Instagram. There he was, grinning on a yacht with some influencer, his arm slung around a woman who definitely wasn't his wife. The Rolex I'd bought him glinted in the sunlight. An idea took shape, vicious and perfect. The restaurant's crystal chandeliers reflected in my knife as I pretended to study the menu. From my seat at the bar, I had a perfect view of table 14, where Ethan was nervously adjusting his tie. His wife's Instagram story had been very specific. Girls' night, don't wait up. Location tagged at a spa in Connecticut. I texted a number I'd pulled from Ethan's private Twitter account, Le Bernardin. Table 14, 8:15 p.m. The collision was poetry. Oh my God, Ethan? A blonde in a dangerously tight red dress appeared as if summoned, her glass of Sauvignon Blanc accidentally drenching his $5,000 suit. You said you were at a tech conference. Ethan's face turned the color of the 1982 Bordeaux he'd ordered. I slipped out just as his actual wife stormed in, her girls' night posse filming everything for what would surely be a viral TikTok by morning. Midnight found me hacking into Ethan's iCloud. Password, Titanic 1997. The idiot really thought he was Leonardo DiCaprio. Between dick pics and screenshots of questionable crypto investments, I found it. Justin, yesterday. Burn the Blackstone due diligence. And wipe Vanessa's backups. Attached was a file named CoulsonNDA.pdf, the smoking gun. Justin had signed a non-disclosure agreeing to never disclose the falsified Miami occupancy reports. Violation penalty, $15 million. My finger hovered over forward to Ed Coulson. Not yet. First, I needed leverage and soldiers. The sunrise painted my apartment gold as I reviewed my notes. Mark's napkin diagram, Ethan's incriminating texts, the NDA. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert. Justin's welcome breakfast. Right. Today was the official announcement of his CEO appointment. I smiled, applying red lipstick like war paint. Let them have their champagne toast. The real celebration would come later. You took my company? Fine. Now I'll take everything else. The ink on my LLC paperwork was still damp when I sent out the first batch of emails. I'd spent all night perfecting the wording, just vague enough to avoid triggering any non-compete clauses, just tempting enough to make them bite. By 10 a.m., my burner phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Michael Cho, our former VP of Acquisitions, was the first to respond. His text read simply, Vanessa, is this real? Lisa Park from Commercial Leasing followed soon after with a more direct question. What exactly are you offering? I smiled as I sipped my third espresso of the morning. The game was finally beginning. I met Michael at the Core Club, one of those exclusive Manhattan spots where the waiters pretend not to recognize billionaires. He arrived with his tie slightly askew, like he'd rushed over between meetings. The moment his scotch arrived, he leaned in. Justin already botched the Hudson Yards deal, he confessed in a hushed tone. Told the developers their design was too feminine during the pitch meeting. His fingers tapped nervously against the crystal glass. I slid a black folder across the table without a word. Inside were the terms, 25% higher commissions than Rivers & Company offered, equity participation, flexible work arrangements. Michael's eyebrows shot up when he reached page 3, where I'd included a screenshot of Justin's Slack message that read, Fire the old guard. Vanessa's pets first. His signature was on the contract before the dessert menu arrived. The audio file was my crown jewel. 3 months ago, I'd gifted Justin a smart whiskey decanter for his bachelor party. What he didn't know was that it recorded every word spoken near it. The clip was perfect. Justin's drunken voice boasted, Of course I inflated those numbers. Coulson's too busy golfing to check. Besides, what's he gonna do? Admit he got played by a 28-year-old? The laughter of his sycophant friends in the background made it even sweeter. I released it in 3 strategic waves. First to major investors at 9 a.m. sharp on Monday morning, then to the board members during Justin's first quarterly presentation. Finally, I sent it directly to Ed Coulson with the simple subject line, Thought you should hear this directly. By lunchtime, Rivers & Company's stock had plummeted 12%. The Bloomberg terminals in our temporary office space kept pinging with updates. My parents' calls went straight to voicemail. Justin's texts grew increasingly frantic. "What the fuck did you do?" came through at 2:47 p.m. "Dad's having chest pains" arrived at 3:12. By 4:03, it had downgraded to a pathetic, "Call me, please." I blocked his number and turned my attention to the growing crowd in our makeshift office. 24 Rivers and Company clients had shown up unannounced, begging to jump ship. The reception area looked like a Black Friday sale at Hermes. Ed Colson didn't schedule meetings. He summoned people like a medieval king. His penthouse overlooking Central Park was all dark wood and leather, smelling faintly of cigar smoke and power. "5 million, he said without preamble, swirling bourbon in a glass that probably cost more than my first car. "But I want Justin Rivers personally barred from the industry." I crossed my legs slowly, letting my Louboutin dangle precariously from my toes. "I'm not running a charity here, Ed. Make it 7 and I'll deliver his real estate license on a silver platter." His grin showed too many teeth. "You're worse than your brother." I tilted my head. "No," I corrected. "I'm better." We celebrated our first million in revenue at a loft in Soho. The space was all exposed brick and industrial lighting, a far cry from the stuffy Rivers and Company offices. Someone, probably Lisa, thought it would be hilarious to invite Justin using a fake investor RSVP. He showed up wearing a "World's Best Boss" mug and a facial tic that hadn't been there last month. "Enjoying yourself?" I asked, handing him a drink with extra ice. Funny how quickly the natural leader narrative falls apart when the money dries up. That's when Mark stepped beside me, his arm brushing mine in a way that made Justin's face go slack. "You're working with him?" Justin's voice cracked. Mark smiled his courtroom smile. "She pays better." At exactly midnight, my phone lit up with a Bloomberg alert. "Rivers and Company loses Blackstone account. Shares plummet 30%. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, champagne flute in hand, and toasted the glittering skyline. The game was far from over, but the tide had officially turned. The game had changed, and this time I was dealing the cards. The ink on the Blackstone deal was barely dry when the summons landed on my desk like a dead pigeon. Rivers and Company versus Vanessa Rivers? The charge? Theft of proprietary clients, breach of fiduciary duty, and attempted corporate sabotage. Justin always did love a dramatic entrance. Apparently, convincing our parents to sue their own daughter was his idea of a masterstroke. He even quoted Sun Tzu in the complaint filing. I'm serious. There was an actual footnote that read, "In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." Cute. What he didn't know, of course, was that I had already started digging into our family's old storage unit in Queens. Among dusty tax folders, termite-eaten blueprints, and my mom's failed candle business inventory, I found it. A crumpled, coffee-stained contract dated March 3rd, 2007, signed by both of my parents and our corporate counsel. The words were clear as crystal. In recognition of her early contributions, Vanessa Rivers shall be granted a 25% ownership stake in Rivers & Co., effective upon her 21st birthday. They had forgotten, but I hadn't. The courtroom was the kind with more mahogany than common sense. The kind where rich people pretended their family drama was a question of law and not emotional warfare dressed in a suit. My parents sat stiffly across from me, avoiding eye contact. Justin looked like he was playing CEO cosplay again, in a pinstripe suit 2 sizes too tight, and a Rolex he probably bought with Dad's emergency funds. Their lawyer, a smirking, overpaid shark from Midtown, stood up, voice smug. Your Honor, my clients allege that Ms. Rivers intentionally siphoned clients from Rivers and Company using insider knowledge obtained during her tenure as Chief Operating Officer. I stood slowly, calmly, like a lioness before the kill. Your Honor, I began, sliding a flash drive onto the clerk's desk. May I enter this into evidence? Click. The courtroom speakers crackled, then hissed. And then came the voices. My parents. Clear as a bell. Dad. We'll sell to Titan once Justin is CEO. He'll take 40%. We'll take the rest. Vanessa? She'll get a pat on the head. Mom? She won't like it. Dad? Then she can leave. That non-compete will muzzle her just fine. I watched as their faces drained of color. The judge raised one eyebrow. The shark visibly paled. I wasn't done. Additionally, I continued, the attached exhibit is a contract, signed, notarized, and never revoked, granting me 25% of Rivers and Company. My stake, which, by the way, they never bought out. So technically, I smiled like a cobra. I'm suing them back for breach of contract, retroactive dividends, and emotional damages if we're feeling generous. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioning stutter. Back at my office, I poured myself a celebratory drink. Tequila, neat. None of that polite champagne nonsense. I had just dragged a generational betrayal into the daylight and burned it with legal fire. And yet, something felt unfinished. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one where I kept all the little souvenirs from this war. The napkin with Mark's doodles, Ethan's NDA confession, the burnt-edge draft of my non-compete I'd ceremoniously lit on fire. Then I saw it. A box, square, black velvet, like something that once held a promise ring or a lie. Inside, the broken bronze head of Justin's Business Leader of the Year statuette. I'd picked it up from my penthouse floor the night everything started. Cleaned it, saved it. Now I wrapped it carefully in gold tissue paper, placed it in a luxury gift box from Saks, and added a note. Legacy is earned, not inherited. Then I called the courier. 3 hours later, Justin posted a photo on Instagram. A shattered statuette in a box, his caption trying hard to be cool. Some people never grow up. I reposted it to the VR Estates Company account with one line. Correction, some people never lead. It got 12,000 likes in an hour. Mark texted me a gif of someone slow clapping. I replied with a champagne emoji and a knife. The lawsuit was in limbo for months, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Every investor now knew the truth. Every client saw through the Rivers and Company illusion. Our parents tried to spin it. A family misunderstanding, they called it. But you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, especially when the toothpaste is a digital recording of you plotting against your own daughter. Rivers and Company stock nosedived again. The press called it a case study in nepotism gone wrong. I just called it Tuesday. Somewhere around midnight, I returned to my apartment, shoes in one hand, tequila in the other. I stood barefoot on the balcony, the California air so different from New York's suffocating smog. Mark was inside, typing away on his laptop, drafting the new board bylaws for VR Estates. He looked good under warm lighting. Solid. Steady. I smiled. Because for the first time in months, I felt steady too. The war wasn't over. But this battle? This one was mine. This wasn't just a victory. It was a lesson carved in granite. A year. That's all it took for Rivers and Company to crumble. 1 year from the day Justin wore his world's best boss mug-like armor to the day the company filed Chapter 11. 80% of the client base gone. Vendors unpaid. A class action lawsuit brewing from defrauded investors. And the final nail? A front-page Wall Street Journal article titled, "The Fall of a Dynasty, When Nepotism Replaces Strategy." There was a picture of Justin looking shell-shocked outside the courthouse. I screenshotted it, printed it, and taped it to our office espresso machine. Lisa drew devil horns on it. We laughed for 10 straight minutes. I wish I could say I felt sorry. But I didn't. Some collapses aren't tragedies. They're corrections. Justin's next move was predictable. He managed to charm his way into a managerial role at a mid-tier real estate firm in Boston. Their press release read like a parody, welcoming bold leadership with Ivy League brilliance. 3 months later, he was escorted out by security. Turns out bold leadership included sexually inappropriate Slack messages, underpaying female analysts, and forging a signature on a contract worth $2.3 million. Oops, the cherry on top? His NDA was accidentally published in the company's transparency report. The clause banning him from contacting investors for 5 years became an industry meme. Someone made a TikTok remix of it. I reposted it with the caption, "Harvard can teach finance. It can't teach character." Meanwhile, VR estates? Thriving. By Q3, we'd absorbed 4 major portfolios, expanded to Miami and San Diego, and hit our first $200 million quarter. Our client retention rate? 96%. Our employee satisfaction score? 91%. One magazine called me the comeback queen of commercial real estate. Another, the shark in red Louboutins. I preferred the second one. I even bought the building that once housed Rivers and Company, turned the top floor into a rooftop co-working lounge. Every Thursday, we serve champagne and call it closure hour. Mark said that was petty. I told him it was tradition. Speaking of Mark, it started with a contract, then coffee, then a habit of finishing each other's emails, then sentences. Then one night, we stayed late reviewing a lease agreement and ended up on my balcony with 2 glasses of Malbec and no mention of work at all. He told me about his brief stint as a jazz drummer. I told him about my fantasy of retiring to Tuscany and running a boutique vineyard called Fermented Vengeance. He laughed. "You're kidding." I wasn't. Now? He's not just my general counsel. He's my business partner. And maybe something more. Let's just say, the only NDA we've signed recently is for our vacation in Tulum. Then it happened. An email from Justin Rivers, subject line, "Exploring opportunities." At first, I thought it was spam or a prank, but nope. There it was in my inbox. "Vanessa, I've been following your success and would love to reconnect. I'm currently seeking new challenges and would be open to discussing any potential openings at VR Estates. Warmly, Justin Warmly." Mark nearly fell out of his chair laughing. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed, "Justin, as you once told me, leadership comes naturally to men. Good luck finding a company that still believes that. P.S. We're not hiring mediocre middle managers. We're hiring women who lead." Vanessa, I hit send and added his email to spam. A week later, my parents asked to meet. We sat across from each other at a quiet Italian restaurant in Tribeca, the same one they used to celebrate milestones like Justin's high school debate trophy and my first major deal, where I footed the bill. This time they paid. "We were wrong," my father said, folding his napkin like he was controlling the narrative. "Terribly wrong," my mother added, her hands trembling around a glass of Pinot. They apologized. Genuinely, I think. They asked if there was any way we could work together again. A new company, perhaps. Or a board position for my father. Maybe I could lend guidance to a small portfolio they were trying to rebuild. I took a slow sip of espresso and smiled politely. "No." Silence. "I don't work for people who once thought I was disposable," I added. "And I certainly don't work with them." My mother's eyes welled. My father cleared his throat. I placed my card on the table and stood. "You're welcome to call if it's personal. But professionally?" I nodded toward the door. "This is where we part." Now, every morning I open my windows to the California sun and think about legacy. Not the kind you inherit. The kind you earn. Brick by brick. Battle by battle. People ask me what I learned from all of it. Here's what I tell them. If they say you're not enough, prove them wrong. Then buy their company. And if they ever come back asking for a job, smile and say, "You know, women really are better at leadership." Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more unbelievable real-life stories.